Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Sis Get a Grip. Alright, first of all, and as always, thank you guys so much for your continued support. We do not take it for granted, especially with everything happening in this world. We want to just give an extra thank you for all the support, but also just potentially like jump into life.
Yes.
Right? So in this video experience, we are going to be discussing what we wish we knew before we got married. I don't think a lot of people know this, but Stacey and I actually spend a lot of time content planning and getting input from people around us, older people who've been married for longer, in this situation at least, and also just like reading articles and doing research online. So this specific video experience is going to be based on like what we found doing research. So I'm just going to jump right in.
Yeah.
And this quote that I'm about to share with you was actually about a gentleman who shared what he wished he knew before he got married. And we decided to actually speak on this because we could both resonate with it. We could both find experiences within our marriage thus far that resonated with what this man said. Let me jump in. He said, "Before I got married, I wish I had a better understanding of my own wounds and the healing I needed. I wish I had spent more time understanding my family dynamic so that I could see how they would impact my marriage." And I resonated. Sorry.
No, see, that was a very loaded statement, and I think that a lot of the times he like captures this so beautifully. A lot of the times people don't realize that being with the families that they've been assigned to, like there's a lot of things that happens in a family household, or even things that they witness the parents do to each other or lack thereof. And those things impact them in a way that affects their marriage. But nobody ever takes time to kind of deal with those wounds before jumping into the next. They just assume that, you know, I could just jump into a marriage. But I think that what we're saying here is that you need to take some time to understand yourself, understand some of the wounds that you may have like unconsciously been exposed to. And an example of that for me actually was, and we spoke about this during planning, that's why I'm like smiling, is saying the words "I love you." Yeah. Like, I come from a family where we just didn't say "I love you" to each other. And even now I joke about it a lot, where I would like call my brother and I would be like, "I love you," and he's like, "Get out of here with that." But we never said "I love you" to each other. We just knew we loved each other, and that was enough. We didn't have to say it to each other. The words LOVE was just never uttered in that household. So I just learned and got used to it, and I didn't even realize it was a wound till my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, was basically like, he would say "I love you," and I would just be so dumbfounded and
receive it
and start off just like thank you, because I just didn't know how to receive that. I think that making a conscious effort to be like, you know, "I love you," and just knowing that what it meant. I felt like "I love you" was just such a pretentious word, or like even the people that love me are not saying it to me. So like I would have to have a Jesus kind of love for you to say that to you. So I think it was just a lot to take in, but I had to heal, and eventually now I say "I love you" to everybody. You meet the lady bagging my groceries, I'm like, "I love you." Just spreading the love. But I think that was like a wound, or something like I can use this practical example of like something I dealt with that I didn't even realize I had an issue with, unless I had I got to the point where I had to break it down and be like, "Oh, I do this because it was what I was exposed to."
That's really a good way to put it. I do this because, I think, because when you say that "I do this because," or you put life into perspective in that way, you kind of also get a moment to like self-check yourself. Like, I do this because I am angry, then therefore my reaction is this. Like, it kind of gives you like the cause and effect. That's not what we're talking about, but that was like a great way to put it. Like, I do this because I'm going to start doing that because I need a lot of I do this because moments. But to jump back in,
do you have some wounds?
Girl, I have so many wounds. Girl, trophies. I'm joking.
Battle scars.
Battle scars. But one what really hit home for me when I read this statement quote from the gentleman was that like I realized the wounds I had, and I think I've mentioned it in some of our video experiences where I always say like I learned or came to realization of my wounds once I was in therapy. But even now, like at being married, like there's still wounds that I'm working on healing. And I want to say one of those for me is like, I say this with the most love to everyone I grew up around, but like I didn't grow up seeing the best example of a marriage. Like, and not like people were married, I just didn't define them as great marriages, or I didn't think they were the kind of marriages I would want to be in. So like having come from that background, I think every now and then I catch myself in the space of like, what is this supposed to be like, right? Because I don't have nothing to reference it to. And I think had I thought of the family dynamics, had I thought about the friends that I like heard of their relationships or their marriages that unfortunately fell apart, had I taken time to study those things about myself, like getting to know that about myself, like, and getting to understand that even though I didn't see the best of what I defined as a marriage growing up, I could create that for myself, right?
Wow.
So I think and I speak for myself when I say this, when I'm usually stuck at the point where I didn't see this, so I don't know how to make it better. Where I'm now trying to get to a point where I'm like, I didn't see this, but I could create my own path. And I think had I known that before I got married, a lot of my emotional distress moments could have been avoided. And even now that I'm saying that, I'm like, I hadn't had like the best week or something, but I'm thinking to myself like, though I didn't see this, or though I didn't have this week, I could still pave the path to go this way instead.
Yeah.
So yeah, that just hit home for me when I read that. And I was just like, wow, one, I'm not alone in that thought process, but two, it also just makes you realize that like there's always a lot to work on, and you can't like try to figure it out all at once.
Yes.
Also, that's like another topic, but like
for sure. And also I'm thinking like, even as like when you're in your single time and you're listening to friends give you stories, some people around you have a negative account of what their relationship went like. So like, let's say you keep hearing about your friends whose man's is cheating on them, and all of a sudden you're like, man, like nobody's gonna cheat on me. Like you subconsciously you're taking that in, and you're setting yourself for you have this expectation of what your marriage should be like before even getting into the marriage. And that expectation comes from the stories that you've heard, not necessarily something you might experience. So you have this perfect gentleman who's amazing to you, or you have this perfect girl who's great to you, but because of the stories that you heard in your past, like now you're checking her, you're checking him, you're like this all the time because of the stories you heard. And I think that's the wound that we're talking about. If you take the time to kind of de-stress and understand, hey, these are not my battles, these were not my stories. Yes, they're unfortunate stories and unfortunate situations, but I'm in control of how I'm gonna make it work in my relationship, and I'm gonna give it a chance. Like instead of setting it up with all these pre-expectations that are shaped by like these terrible stories that we sometimes hear.
That was good. That was really good. The next I guess bullet point, or the next part of the conversation is unexpected expectations. And when I say that has been a thing in my household for the past week, that has been a thing in my household for the past week. Should I go or you want to go? So when we say unexpected expectations, it's more so like, you know, your partner, your husband, your wife has this expectation of you that you did not expect to have. So the ironies when we were doing our research, the lady said, my husband's mom always made him pound cake. And out of nowhere, he expected me to make him pound cake every single day. And I was just like, bro, that is my life. Like, my husband just has these expectations, and I'm just like, wow, I'm gonna work hard to meet those for you, but that was not what I expected. I think it could go either left or right. It could go left in the sense that like that could become a argument in your marriage, or you guys can try to figure out a way to compromise around it. We are currently in the middle. We are in the middle because of me. Like, I'm more like, I'm gonna hit this to like make sure you get it, but then it turns into argument because I get very defensive. And then he's just like, we can compromise. Like, I get it. The husband has like an idea of what a wife is supposed to be, and my idea of what a wife is supposed to be is also a bit different. And that was very unexpected for me. I don't know why I thought, like, because we're Christians, because we sat in the same marriage counseling sessions, like, I thought like we were on the same page. But I wish I really knew before I got married that like there's gonna be expectations that are definitely unexpected, that like you're not gonna try to figure out like how you're gonna meet them.
Yeah. And even now that you're mentioning that, and I didn't think about this before, I think that even men and women have like different ways of looking at things.
Yes.
Like they have different expectation. It might be the same thing, but the way in which they're, I guess, looking to see the same things.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's a little bit about love language, but I don't want to divert too far. And I do want to say an expectation for my pound cake example was so I make these things called, my husband calls them green greens, but basically it's spinach made in with like palm oil and like,
it's so good. First, when she started doing that, I had to start doing it too. Just throw that out there.
And I started doing this because my husband's grandmother apparently makes this all the time. So he came, and one day we were in the house, and he's like, "You're gonna have to ask my grandma how to make that because like I like this a lot." And I was just like, here we go. I have to make this, and I'm a blender kind of chick, but this food requires me to
mush it.
What did I call it? The traditional way. I mean, I gotta put my back into it to make it, but that's neither here nor there. It's not the most easiest thing to make, but he likes it so much, and I could easily be like, you know what? That's an expectation you could definitely have when you go back home.
Oh, that's true.
You know, why do I have to always make it? But I also gotta understand that his expectation, like, as a wife, it's kind of my duty to get in the places that I could. Like, if he was asking for, I don't know what he was asking that I couldn't do, but like, I can choose to look at it like you mentioned, in a way where I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing this, go eat. Like, if this is, you can have this every once in a while with grandma. You don't have to ask me about that.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of like, you know what, where can I fit in the mantle? I'll learn this recipe and I would do it. And it's the same thing. He'll like eat a friend's oxtails. Gifty makes some bomb oxtails, by the way. And he's just kind of like, babe, I really like those oxtails. And I was just kind of like, okay. So Gifty has promised on camera to teach me the oxtails.
Oh, yeah, that's no problem at all.
Okay.
But in saying that, Stacey's also making me realize that, like, I need to, you said something like fit in where you could get in where you could get in. I think that's a lot of what I need to do as well, because I think we understand that any relationship, whether friendship, family, whatever, marriage in this situation works when both people are willing to give.
Definitely.
And I think his expectations are really not that like crazy or anything. But for me, I'm just like, really? Like,
you're so
really?
entitled.
Yeah! But then I also think of culture and like it's more so culture, nothing else. When I think of culture, I also just realized like culture and religion actually, like being a Christian, like, and understanding like the place of the husband and the place of the wife.
Yes.
I do a lot of that thinking, and that aligns with what Stacey's saying, that like get in where you could get in. Did I say that correctly? Yes. Get in where you could get in, and get in that space with the right mentality. Because you could have made the green so angry, it wasn't from your heart. Right? And I've done, and I could sit here and say, like, I've done things that weren't from my heart, and in the moment I'm just like, Gifty, this could have been the simplest thing you could have done. And I thrive on my husband's happiness. Like, when he's down, I'm I'm just like, oh, I don't know how to act. Like, I just don't know how to act. Like, this, as crazy as that sounds. So, like, I wish I had known that. Like, you know, trying to get in where I could get in, trying to compromise, as you were saying, and, like, making the best of situations.
Definitely.
Making the best of situations. Our third one, which I really thought was very powerful and also, like, may take a lot of people by shock, is your husband is never going to complete your life. And in this situation, you can interchange husband with wife. I don't know, I thought it was, like, very meaningful, but let me read it. She said, I grew up dreaming about my wedding, and I couldn't wait to be a wife. Shortly after my husband and I married, though, I felt disappointed. I wasn't happy as I thought I would be. As it turns out, my husband, no matter how hard he tried, couldn't make me completely happy. Even the best husbands can't do that. Don't expect your husband to fill the role that only God can fill.
Amen to that.
Yeah, and
yeah, I think that was actually just beautifully captured because people, like, especially girls, I'm always coming for the girls, but sis, like, you dream. I know, right? You're like dreaming about your wedding, you've been planning it, you're excited, all you think about is your wedding, and it's like, oh, I can't wait because that's gonna be the cherry on top. Like, I go to school, get my education, then I get married, then, you know, life is complete. But I think people don't realize that that's just the start. Like, you're not even, like, that's not, like, the reason that you're going to be happy. And I think that was actually beautifully captured because a lot of people go into, like, marriage with that perception that once I'm here, like, this is it, like, I've reached optimal happiness. But a lot of people find themselves very unhappy in marriages, and it doesn't stop there.
Yeah. I think the part that resonated the most with me is when she said I felt disappointed. Mm-hmm. So the honest truth is, I've never been the type of girl that envisioned my wedding. Where I feel like a lot of good females envision their wedding. I more so envisioned my marriage, my family. Like, I envisioned what that was for me. And I haven't pinpoint why, but that's what it was for me. So when she said that I felt disappointed, there's been times in my marriage where I felt disappointed. And when I go back to what caused my disappointment, it's because of both expectations I had. You know, like, I felt disappointment in most of the situations because I had this whole dreamt up, imagined world of what my marriage would be like, whatever I pictured. But the truth of the matter is, like, that was not what was happening in the moment, and that made me extremely disappointed. So I wish I knew that in those moments, one, there's no such thing as a marriage that you could dream of, right? You can't base your actual marriage on what you envisioned. But more importantly, I really wish, and to this day, as I'm sitting here, as I'm speaking now, it's a continuous reminder for me that my husband is not going to complete my life. That is not his job. And I always say this, that I wish I knew that. Yeah, because even while dating, courting, and the first almost 2 years of our marriage, like, I wish I had known that, because I think I would have been a different woman.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the misconception comes from the things we hear. Like, we think that we're like this puzzle and we come together and all of a sudden we're like,
supposed to fit perfectly.
And then we're just happy because the missing puzzle to your life has finally come about. And I don't think that's the case, because your happiness is based on you.
Yes.
And nobody can give that to you. And like Lady Beautiful captured that again. God gives you that happiness. If you're right with God, I think I had read an article one time that said that you want to make sure, you want to have a relationship where you guys are both right with God, and in God you guys have a connection. Because once it's the relationship you have is in God, then irrespective of the presence or the absence of each other, because life has been very weird.
Sorry, let me let you laugh. I just caught the revelation. Sorry.
But
let me let you laugh.
Irrespective of like the presence or the absence, because life is very unpredictable, and like there could be moments that, for whatever reason, your spouse won't be around, your wife or your husband won't be around. So like, where does that leave you? So if you have the relationship built in God, then when in the absence of your spouse, there isn't this big void. So it's first in God, then
In your heart.
in your heart.
Oh my, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. No, because as I said, like, even as I sit here now, like, I put too much pressure on the husband. And that is because my void is not for him to fill. Like, I need to depend more on God. And as I was driving over, I was just like, all these thoughts are because my relationship with God is not as good as I would like for it to be. Hence my void. And now I'm using a human, which happens to be the husband, to fill that void. But in reality, actually working up towards God and not working down towards the husband. But I love that. That was like perfectly captured. That was really good.
That was a good article that you said.
It was really good.
It was good. But I definitely also want to mention that I think that we are allowed to feel those things, right? Like when we have those expectations, because when you're younger, the whole point of being young is to like have these expectations of what the future would look like. It's what motivates you as a child. Yeah, so it's okay to have those expectations, but hold on to them like loosely. Like if they fall in place, great. But if they don't, like don't
be disappointed.
Yeah. Dude, no. Like you're even allowed to be disappointed. Just don't ride the disappointment out too long. Like allow yourself to feel those feelings, girl. You're in a roll today. Allow yourself to feel those feelings, like the disappointment. Like, okay, this is what I expected, but more so, dig deeper. Like that's a point to kind of shine a light on your insecurities and like, what is making me feel those feelings? Like, try to identify where those feelings are coming from, because you'll be surprised. Like I said, it's all those things that you keep hearing as a child or seeing as a child, exposed to consciously or unconsciously. You're picking those up and you're thinking, you build this perception based on everything that you picked up. So I think these are all things that you should know or like try to consider at least before you get married, because they would help you in the long run.
Great, so I'm going to do a quick recap, right? So the first one was know yourself, right?
Yes.
Before you get married, do your best to get to know yourself as much as possible. I wish I had like taken more time to actually do that. The second one was the unexpected expectations, right? Have an understanding that those unexpected expectations are going to come along. It depends on you as the couple as how you're going to address them, but more importantly, how you're going to move past it. And the last one, which captures all of this in a nutshell for us, is like, do not expect your husband and or your wife, not and or your wife.
Yes. Clarification.
Yes. Do not expect your husband or wife to fill the void that God is supposed to be in that space for.
So 3 points. Yes.
So as always, thank you guys for listening to Sis
Get a Grip.